Hi, I'm talking with Portland Tagavi, the co-writer and director of They Won't Last. Hi, Portland.
Hi. Hey, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Good.
So I want to jump right in because one of the things I really liked about your film is that opening 2-minute sequence where it's kind of wordlessly sets the stage for the rest of the film. And, it's not that uncommon for me to see that in a feature length movie, where you get 10 minutes in or something and finally you see the title of the movie. But I've only seen that a couple of times with short films, and I have to say most of the time it does not work when I see it in a short film. And for years I thought it worked brilliantly. So I was wondering if you could talk about how it came about that you chose to open your film that way.
Uh, Thank you for the question. I kind of always imagined it that way. Actually, when I was working with my co-writer, we had kind of discussed that actually, and he was suggesting that he was like, I don't know if that's gonna work. So we actually tried for like the first couple drafts of the script. We had like a whole dialogue sequence about talking about like couples in the reception who had when would they break up, how did they meet, and then someone was like, that's in like Date Night or something with Steve Carell and Tina Fey, and I was like, what? No. So I kind of was rethinking it, and I was like, I kind of want to go back to the way that I had always kind of envisioned it, where we just kind of get what it was by seeing how they looked at each other, and just kind of setting up the stage. And I found this great song. I love to look up songs that I would put on the soundtrack if I ever got to make a soundtrack. And I found that one song that I use in the opening, and I was like, it'll be slow motion, and we'd have this song that would play out almost like a music video. But I originally wanted to be like kind of like one take or two takes, and I was looking at the opening for Paul Thomas Anderson's Boogie Nights and things like that. And I also came from animation originally, and I went to CalArts, and our whole first year we're supposed to make a 90-second short film with no dialogue and just kind of just telling things visually. So I had a huge extensive background in telling narratives without dialogue, and just by showing the key things that tell you what's going on and what's going on in the characters' heads. And I'm glad it worked. I was like, when we were shooting it, we actually were shooting it in slow motion, and we had picked our frame rate and everything. And then my DP looked at me and she was like, I don't know, this seems like it's gonna drag. Should we shoot this also in real time? And I was freaking out because I never thought of that. And I was like, maybe. So we would do a take of it in slow mo, and then we would do another one just to safety it in a normal frame, right? And then halfway through, we're like, this is gonna take too long. We have to take one. And so I stuck with slow motion, and it worked. So I'm glad.
It works really well. It really sets the feel for the rest of the film. And then when it finally switches to the hotel room and the rest of it's talking, you know so much about them without ever having heard them talk to each other already. You kind of know what's coming, which I thought was great.
Thank you. And that actually is a good point, because I felt like the film was already so dialogue heavy. I felt like having it open without dialogue, since they talk so much, would have a nice balance.
The other thing I liked about it is right when the title comes up and you see They Won't Last, um, it almost to me feels like a little bit of purposeful misdirection to the audience, because you really feel like, oh, this is gonna, this is just gonna explode. They won't last. And then as the scene evolves, you start to wonder, you start realizing, if you're thinking about the title, that may not be what the title's referring to.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I
And,
wanted it to
and
be is it this couple that doesn't last, or is it the other couple that
right,
doesn't
right.
last? Yeah.
Did you know that you wanted that twist at the end from the beginning, or did that kind of come up and during the writing process?
That actually, so at AFI, when we were pitching our thesis projects, I had actually pitched this idea as so at AFI you do 2 years, and your first year you do 3 films. And when I first started at AFI, the directors get to pitch 3 ideas, and then everyone will team around one of them. And this was one of the first pitches I had done, and I always knew that I wanted this structure, and it was actually the middle part that needed a lot of like love and care. I was like, a couple go to their hotel room after a wedding, and she's super drunk, and she's just like getting stressed out about marriage and stuff, and they go to the room and they're talking like they talk shit about the married couple, and you kind of realize that he wants to get married and she doesn't, and she's like, what? And he uses them as an example of like why marriage works, and she's like, she cheated on him, and then they would have their fight, and then they have sex, and then we would go to the other room next door, and we would have seen that they heard everything. And every time I pitched that, everyone was like, oh my god, it's so funny, I love it, that twist at the end. But it was like I would basically gloss over what would be the content of the whole film, and I would just be like, and then this happens, but then they heard everything, and I was like, ah, yes. So like that was always kind of the structure, and that's
Hmm.
kind of like the structure that won people over. And
Right.
so when I got like my team together, I was just like, so how do we care about the people in the movie that's there for like most of it? So yeah.
Yeah. I gotta say, your two leads were just perfect. Their timing is really good. I was telling my 15-year-old daughter that you had Jack Tasana, who she immediately said, Sokka? She was
Yeah.
thrilled. She's a big Avatar fan that he was in there. And there was just like a lot of physical humor in there. And some of it's very subtle, some of it's very broad. Is is this like a natural language for you, that kind of physical humor? Is that from your animation background?
Yeah, it's definitely from my animation background, and also just like my favorite filmmakers. Like I referenced Paul Thomas Anderson, but like when I was working in animation, studying animation, I watched so much Charlie Chaplin, and oh my gosh, I always forget the like Harold Lloyd, and Buster Keaton, and I just those films stand the test of time, because I don't know, people just like watching people fall. And I'm also like naturally a very physical, like an animated person. And so it doesn't, when I put that kind of stuff in anything that I write or make, it doesn't feel like I'm shoehorning in like comedy. It's like something that I would naturally have done. Like I've definitely fallen into an elevator before.
That was a great scene.
Oh, thank
And
you.
yeah, I looked up the actress. I haven't seen her as well. I mean I haven't seen Jack DeSena that much. I've heard him a lot, whether I wanted to or not. But I hadn't seen her as much, and I didn't see that she had done that much comedy. But I thought she was brilliant in this.
She was they were both amazing. Like I actually didn't know, I didn't recognize Jack. I saw both of their audition tapes. We luckily had it in the budget for a casting director, and they sent us, they were like in the first group of audition tapes we saw. And I remember I actually for the character that Jack played, he was the first tape I'd seen. And I was like, well, this is amazing. If this is it, then like, what do the others look like? And I just, it like never, it was never as good. Like everyone was great. Like I saw so many great people, but like the energy that he brought was just so, I just felt for him. Like the way that I had written his character, uh, he wasn't as lovable as that. I felt like Jack brought that lovability that I really felt was actually missing from the script. And then Brittany, she was great. And I actually had originally, when I was casting, I envisioned Christine to be like dark hair and like more. And I imagined, I had been doing so much research, and all of the brides in every magazine were blonde. And I kind of wanted to have like, I was like, oh, I don't want them to be the same. And I just had pictured the bride being blonde. I was like, she looks more like the bride. And then I remember looking at like all the audition tapes again and having them come in. I was like, no, she's perfect. Like her energy was perfect, and like her comedic timing was was perfect, and I barely had to say anything to both of them. And that's kind of like a dream, especially with comedy, where I had worked with some actors before with the same script, and it was so different depending on who was playing it. And yeah, and like some people would play it more like a drama, some people would play it like the way that people read into it and the way that people performed the dialogue was so varying, but the way that they both played it together was exactly how I had pictured it. And I was like, oh yes, thank you, please stay, you know.
Yeah, that was great. So I'm going to ask the obvious question. Was any part of this story inspired by anything in your life or friend's life or anything like that?
Yeah, actually, so when I had just graduated from college, I had never lived by myself before. I moved into a one bedroom, and I had like a really great job, but I found myself being extremely lonely. Like I had all of my really, really close friends were still in college, and a lot of my friends that I had made at work were either older than me or had their own lives going on. And I just would like go to work and then come home, and I was single, and I was just like, I guess I'm watching four movies and eating salad tonight, like it was just really, I remember I got so lonely I would sit on my floor in my apartment and just listen to voicemails. I was like, oh, they're like, oh, someone wanted to, like, we're downstairs, we're ready to go to the pizza place. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when that happened. That was so nice. And then one night I was like going to bed and I had work in the morning, and out of nowhere, my neighbors were just at 2 in the morning, just started having like the loudest sex I'd ever heard in my life. And it just kept going. It just kept going on for like, I think an hour or two. It's just really loud, descriptive, expository sex. And I had never experienced that before. And I was like, okay, this is frustrating, but I can't do anything. I wasn't gonna like bang on the wall. And then I was like messaging friends, and they were like, well, at least they love each other. Like, like it's annoying, but like they love each other. I was like, yeah, that's a positive thing. It's a positive way to look at it. But then like right after that, they had the most petty, and like the volume of the sex was nothing compared to the volume of the argument that followed. And that whole like kind of like pattern of sex, argument, sex happened for 6 months, the whole time I was living there. And like I know their names. His name was Emil, her name was Lauren. He was a 25-year-old doctor, she was a 30-year-old intern. And like they would just fight every day. I think they bought a dog to save their relationship. And it was just like listening to them was so fascinating for me. And I was like, why are they still together? And I was like, I guess that they're still together because being unhappy and together is better than being me, which is lonely and numb to the world. I don't know. I was just like, what is this? And at the time I was uh I was still working in animation, and I wanted to apply to film school. And so I was like, oh, you have to make a film to apply. And I just watched, I was watching four movies every night. I was trying to watch all the AFI 100 films, and I watched Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And I was like, I want to do that, but with two people who like shouldn't be together. And the original idea was that they were just like two people that lived in an apartment, and they had gone to a party and they were talking shit about some friends of theirs, and the same thing happens, and then like an old woman is listening, or like a slumber party is next door, something where there would be a tag. And so it was just kind of like inspired by that. And then also I live with my best friend, and we're basically a married couple, so a lot of the like blocking in the movie is kind of inspired by our arguments. But yeah, so it was very deeply inspired by a lot of stuff. Yeah.
I feel like I know so much right now. Wow, I think you could get a whole feature out of that story you told.
Oh,
It's just,
hopefully.
now, was this the first film? first film you directed at AFI, or where is this in the sequence of your directing live action?
So AFI does give you 3 films to do in your first year, but they're like back to back to back to back. So I can technically say I've directed 5
Okay.
shorts, maybe 6, actually six shorts. So I directed 3 films my first year, and they are not online. No one's allowed to watch them actually. And then the cinematographers do MOS projects where you're shooting on film and you do basically like edit and camera type stuff. And we do one first year, and then me and my DP that I worked with on They Won't Last, we did another MOS together uh, in October or November of the year prior to making They Won't Last. So I had some experience, but before going to AFI, I'd actually never been on set before.
Okay.
So it was kind of a crash course for
Steep learning
me.
curve.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great job. And actually, we've had a fair number of AFI students submit their movies, and a few select ones get in over the past several years. So you're one of the select few.
Oh, thank you.